The humble watch dealer. Enemy of the die-hard enthusiast community that claim they are destroying the hobby by inflating their dream watches, putting them out of reach for the many, and only a frivolous flex for the more privileged few. Publicly despised by the authorized dealer, but behind the mask encouraging them anonymously, as a strong secondary market only boosts demand more for the new watches that they sell. Love them or not yourself, it's hard to deny that the secondary market watch dealer has a huge role to play, and with demand for brands like Rolex soaring in the last 5 years, it's clear that they're here to stay too, and more dealers like myself are likely to enter the fray. So, who wants to be a watch dealer? What does it take to become one? What battles will you encounter along the way? And will it make you a millionaire? Now, the common misconception with this job is that you need to either be rich, have wealthy backers, or be able to rely on the bank of mum and dad to get started with a good breadth of inventory. But that certainly isn't the case, and it absolutely is not how I started. I graduated from university and took a job at an investment bank where I plucked up the courage to spend the most I'd ever spent on a timepiece at the time, a massive £250 on a Tag Heuer Formula 1. And it, to be fair, was absolutely knackered, in awful condition. So here I was, having spent £250 on a watch that I really didn't want to wear because it just looked terrible. So I thought to myself, right, you've got two choices. You can either sell it and try to get your money back and pretend it never happened, or you can make it look a little bit better. You could polish it perhaps or learn how to refurbish the case and the bracelet on this watch so that you can actually wear it. So that's what I did. I decided to build myself a little wooden jig with some sandpaper on there and actually apply the brushed finish to the bracelet myself. The bracelet almost came up as good as new, and I was very chuffed with it, and I wore it for a couple of weeks, and inevitably, how it is in this hobby, you get bored of it. You get bored of all of the watches in your collection eventually. So I sold it, listed it on eBay, and I remember I sold that watch for around £400. So I thought, brilliant, I've made myself £150 here, minus say £30 for the box. And really for me, that's how it all started. I found a way that I could add value to these absolutely knackered Tag Heuer watches that needed a little bit of life breathing back into them. They were maybe 10-15 years old, but the Tag Heuer Formula 1 was extremely popular and still is to this day. It is one of the most wanted entry-level Swiss watches money can buy. And so the secondary market for it, and especially on eBay, was absolutely buoyant, and the rest was history. I was buying 4 or 5 of those every week and refurbishing them in whatever way I could. And I suppose the point is, all of this that I was doing was with a very small pot of capital of just £1,000. I then obviously started to trade my way up and work my way through Omega with vintage Omega Seamasters. That's why I'm a massive fan of the Omega Seamaster 300M that first featured in the James Bond saga with Pierce Brosnan. Those watches I was buying, refurbishing the bracelets on them and selling them on at £200, £300, £400 profit sometimes, and I was buying 2 or 3 of those a week. And then naturally from there my capital grew and I was able to start getting into vintage Rolex Datejust, and so on and so forth. But I wasn't actually using that same approach anymore where I was refurbishing them. I was buying them at a good price and selling them on, and using that credibility that I'd already built up on my eBay platform as a trusted seller with good reviews and good feedback. I didn't have to refurbish watches anymore when I got into Rolex or Cartier, and was able to really rapidly grow my capital, which now actually is culminated in a fully fledged business 4 or 5 years down the line. So it really does go to show that you don't actually need a huge pot of capital to get going. And if anything, if you did, it may not be the most prudent strategy to just go out there with £100,000 and try to source yourself 5 stainless steel Rolex sports watches before you've even learned to walk. Familiarizing yourselves with the entry-level brands is a good way to start, because if you make a mistake on these watches, guys, you know you've not lost yourself a huge amount of money. If you're buying watches that are tens of thousands of pounds, brand new unworn 2022 Rolex pieces, and you don't know the market conditions, you don't know the true market value of that watch, the retail end user price and the actual trade value, because you haven't got that much of an understanding as a rookie of how the market works and changes and evolves rapidly on a daily basis nowadays. If you hold that watch for a few weeks, you could end up losing hundreds if not thousands of pounds. Brands like Omega at entry level, vintage Rolex Datejust pieces, Tag Heuer, these have been relatively unaffected by the market correction that we've seen in the last 6 or 7 months. So you haven't got to worry about holding the inventory for too long and it actually experiencing a depreciation in value, which is the big problem. So the more you spend, the more you expose yourself to risk. Now, moving on then to knowledge. Knowledge is key because what it does is establishes trust between yourself and that potential customer. If a potential customer can see that you know your stuff, and even better, if you can teach them a thing or two and they can go away having learned something, then that's great because you've actually given them something that money can't buy. You of course need to be able to answer all of the questions that they're going to ask you, otherwise they're just going to buy off somebody else who can answer those questions. You have to remember that this is a competition. You will be up against people who do know their stuff, dealers who absolutely have spent the time researching the brands that they are selling and are able to pass on knowledge about those watches as a kind of ancillary service on top of just the physical watch itself. And that ancillary service of sharing knowledge has a value. And that brings me on to my next key point, that forming relationships is absolutely imperative to make it in this business and to be successful, because repeat clients are very valuable. Now, it is in the marketing sphere a known fact that it costs 10 times more to gain a new customer than to actually just sell again to somebody who is already an existing client of yours. Whichever way you look at that, it's going to be a lot cheaper if you work on forming relationships with those clients that you already have and making sure that that process of them buying from you or selling to you is more than just an economic transactional process. Once someone is your client, then they should be your client for as long as you're in this business for. Because at the end of the day, guys, you've got to realize that you are selling luxury, and a massive part of luxury is service, and a massive part of the service is sharing your knowledge, answering questions, and always being on hand to speak with that client, advise that client wherever you can. The next major thing I would say for being successful in this trade is differentiation. You have to understand why you're different, because if you're the same as everybody else, why would a client come to you? And it's as simple as that. That's why watching your competitors and staying close to your competitors is very important. You have to know your competitors' businesses inside out, because you have to learn not just what are they doing well, but also what is it that they're not doing. What is it that they're not doing that you can do to differentiate yourselves and actually put you one step ahead of that competitor? Now, differentiation can come in many different forms, but for me, what I did when I first set out on this journey is I was looking at a secondary watch market that really didn't have a lot of trust from the vast majority of enthusiasts, and that was because there was a shady reputation I found attached to this sort of almost perceived dodgy dealing practice of buying a Rolex from someone who's just picked it up from an authorized dealer. I wanted to try as best as I could to address that, and I felt that what was happening is that there was, for want of better description, too many dealers in hoodies and caps flipping watches out of a case, goodbye, I never want to see you again. And there was a lot of that going on, and there still is. But what I recognized is that there are a lot of enthusiasts that do want to beat the waitlist and do want to pay above that retail price, but they want to be treated in the same way as if they went to the authorized dealer. They want a luxury service. If someone is paying tens of thousands of pounds for anything from you, then it's luxury, and you should absolutely be providing a luxury service with that. We were finding that it was sort of a dirty word to talk about watches as potential investments, or to actually even talk about the monetary aspect of watches as assets, or even refer to them as an asset class, when they absolutely were. So it was for us to differentiate ourselves. We wanted to remove that veil and have those open and honest discussions with our clients. And to find your unique selling point, what you have to do is look inward as well. What are your personal skills? What is your background? What's your expertise? Now, my background, I'm an accountant. That's my qualification. I've got a finance degree. I felt that I credibly was able to actually have those conversations with clients about that investment aspect, and that's why certain clients have decided to keep returning to us and give us that repeat business, which I mentioned earlier as being key. And the last key to success in this trade that I want to touch on is integrity. If you commit to a deal at a certain price, then you should stick to it. Being a man of your word is important because it establishes respect. Are you selling those watches with a watch registered certificate? You absolutely should be running that check on the lost and stolen database. Have you got a bulletproof authentication procedure? It's absolutely key to your integrity and professionalism. If you're going to be selling items, luxury goods of tens of thousands of pounds, then you absolutely want to be sure that it's real and not a fake. And that's why ensuring that you have the right equipment, you have a time grapher machine, you have a subscription to the watch register. You've got to do everything that you can to ensure that what you offer is professional, and as thorough as it can be. Also, when I talk about integrity, I want to touch on this subject of not ripping people off. Now, values in the market are there for all to see. So if you've got somebody approaching you with a brand new Pepsi that they've just walked out of the authorized dealer with, and you know that the trade price of that is, say, £18,000, then you should be offering them around about that figure. If you're going in there and offering them £16,000 because you're an opportunist, then that might be great. They might fall for that. But I guarantee you they won't come back, because they will find out that you've ripped them off, and straight away you've lost integrity with that person, and they're going to spread the word to everybody else to keep away from you. And there is a saying that I live by, that you can milk a cow as many times as you like, but you can only slaughter it once. So what that basically means is look after your clients, and if you look after them and you're fair and you're honest and you're open, then they're going to keep coming back to you. Anyway, good luck if you're going to be mad enough to embark on this journey. 2022 has certainly been a volatile year, full of ups and downs for us at Beat the Waitlist, but we soldier on, and I'm sure many individuals will want to be taking up this trade as we go forward into 2023. That concludes this week's video. Anyway, thanks very much for joining me. Please go check out beatthewaitlist-watches.com, and I'll see you next time. Take care.